little look behind the curtain. So you will see this shirt a lot, probably in the month of July, and a little after, because I've actually already recorded a video that will be posting probably mid-August. Anyway, I'm recording these all on the same day, in late June. Recently, Professor Dungeon Master put out a video where he talked about doing independent games in July. There's been a movement, a very welcome movement as far as I'm concerned, in the wake of a certain company's poor behavior, particularly in relation to fans of its game. And that is a company whose game tends to take the air out of the room due to its ubiquity in the hobby. For better or worse, a lot more people have gotten into the hobby thanks to that game, so I am not crapping on it as much as it's never been my bag, and as much as the behavior of the company is an absolute 0% shock to me. But nonetheless, on a positive note, it's getting people, maybe not as many as we'd all love, but it's getting people to look outside of that one single element. It's like when you have somebody who gets into reading and they get obsessed with one author. You're always glad when they try out other authors. Even more glad when they step outside of the genre that they're reading. So if they've only ever read mysteries and they try a sci-fi novel, if they've only ever read fantasy and they try a horror novel, if they've only ever read fiction and they read some nonfiction, it's always a good thing, a happy thing to see somebody branching out. And I think that we in the hobby should be supportive of that. So I agree with Professor Dungeon Master that it's a great thing to celebrate independent games. Now, that said, I am going to be extremely generous in what I refer to as independent games. Basically, I may be talking about anything except for that one big company. So, in the note of that, whatever, this video here will be my first in a series I will try to release over the course of July as sort of bonus videos from the normal ones that I've been doing. Excuse me. I'm going to be recording a bunch of videos here in a row. They're going to try to go pretty quick. So first up, and I've talked about some of these videos. You know, I do these in one take. Again, look behind the camera or behind the curtain, whatever. I do these in one take. I stumble over my words. I say a lot because they're unscripted. They're unedited. This is what you get. If you don't like this, I'm sorry, but there's plenty of other people on YouTube with real production values who edit their videos and put in lovely graphics. That's not me. This is probably as good as it's going to get. But I'm going to try to talk about some interesting games. Wow, I've talked way too long about other stuff. So first up, what I'm going to talk about is Tales from the Loop. This is one of those where, again, I'm being pretty generous on calling it an independent game. I feel like Free League, they're distributed through Modiphius. Modiphius is a pretty big game company. They distribute a lot of games. They carry a lot of games that they produce themselves, and they also distribute for Free League, among others. Free League is a Swedish company. I believe that's the case. I want to say Anarchist Collective, but I could be wrong on that. But anyway, they do a lot of really interesting games. They put in very good production. Like, these are really nice books. Graphically, they're beautiful. I think physically, they're nice. So, notes left over from a game I ran. Great art. I mean, obviously, the art on this game is based on a series of art books by Simon Stålenhag. Simon Stålenhag. Let me have a little bit more moxie. Nectar of the Gods. You know, any award winner. Beautiful art. Nice design. It's a real nice system. Really, really good system. Part based on the Year Zero engine, which apparently was used in Mutant Year Zero, one game from them that I haven't actually checked out. It is an alternate 80s and 80s that never was. You play kids, you have kid-based adventures like films like The Goonies or The Explorers or that kind of thing. It's a little bit dark, but it never goes super dark. Now, from what I understand, Things from the Flood, the follow-up game to this, which is set in the 90s, can go a little darker, where kids can actually die, that kind of thing. You're playing teens, and things can get real grim. I haven't checked it out. I said before on this channel, and I'm sorry to those who I offend, but I don't like the 90s. I lived through the 90s. I was a teen and young adult in the 90s. I didn't enjoy them when they were happening, and I don't have a lot of nostalgia for them as a decade, even though sometimes I have nostalgia for my life during the 90s. Sometimes. Nostalgia's a trap. But anyway, Tales from the Loop. I think this game is the bee's knees. It's really cool. Again, it's beautiful. I think the art alone sells it. I mean, it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous art. This sort of wistful vision of an 80s that never was, with this ultra tech, and it gets into the stuff that I really get into, the post-60s. I've talked about this before, so I'm using phrases that you may have heard before, but post-60s, the loss of the hopeful utopia, the maybe naive utopia of drugs and technology and free love and all of that sort of thing. And you had that, the sort of 60s turned dark in the 70s, turned bitter in the 80s. You know, a lot of people look back at the 80s and are like, oh, it's so happy, they're so fun. But it was a sad, grim, ugly time. High crime. You know, people talk about crime today. That's BS. Crime in America is at one of its lowest points historically. The 80s and early 90s, the crime was horrible. The treatment of people, of anybody different, was horrible. Life for a lot of people in America and beyond was horrible. And we all sat with this thought that at any moment the bombs were going to drop. As a kid growing up in that time period, that was a genuine thought in the back of my head all the time, just as a baseline. As a baseline, you just thought, any moment now, it's all over. I literally thought about things like, oh, well, we'll be lucky. We live near one of the big airfields on the eastern seaboard. That's going to be, it was originally in the, where I grew up was originally in, like, I think the first or second wave of nuclear drop spots. So, you know, I grew up with that. And I could tell you, for younger people who didn't grow up with that, it wasn't fun. You know, it wasn't happy. We had happy moments, but it was a grim time. So anyway, I think it's fascinating. I think this alternate 80s is fascinating, and it's a fun playground to tell some interesting stories in. I've only managed to run one game. I loved it. I think it's definitely worth checking out. I want to run more. So yeah, there's my rant. There's my first video. The rest of them probably won't be quite so ranty. But here's my first video in this series of checking out indie games, because there's so much more out there. I guess I should tell you a quick thing about the system. It's a dice pool system. You have several D6, and you just want to roll successes. The more successes you roll, the better you do. I don't know. Maybe I should. There's better videos on the system. Anyway, really good. It's worth checking out. Highly recommended. There's a few supplements for it. I wish there was more, but there are a few out there. It's great stuff. Can't recommend highly enough. Check it out. On the next video, we'll see how this goes.